Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from.
Late afternoon light reached the Apache border camp in thin, uneven strips, the kind that appeared after a long day of dust, smoke, and heat. The ground held footprints, old ashes, and broken bits of trade. Horsehair rope, cracked pottery, worn-out saddle straps. Men bartered over things laid out on blankets, and the noise rose and fell in ordinary waves until someone laughed too loud or someone shoved another man aside. Nothing here felt settled. In the center of the camp, Cole Warren stood tied to a rough wooden post with his wrists pulled behind him. The rope cut into his skin, and the tension in his shoulders forced him to shift every few minutes just to keep his hands from going numb. Sweat mixed with dirt on his face, and dried blood marked the left side of his jaw where one of the renegades hit him earlier. He kept his breathing even, partly to handle the pain, and partly because any sign of panic would make him look weak to men who were looking for reasons to break him further. Cole's thoughts moved slowly and sharply, the way a man thinks when he has run out of good choices. He had been driving cattle alone that morning, planning to reach a small grazing bend before sunset. His purpose was simple: deliver the herd, collect his pay, and move on before anyone asked him to stay. He had no interest in towns, no interest in forming ties. Trouble found him anyway. The renegades had rushed him near the dry wash, pulled him off his horse, and taken him without giving him time to understand what they wanted. Now he stood in the middle of a camp that didn't care whether he lived or not, waiting to be traded for whatever scraps the men here considered useful. He tried to stay alert, but each hour tied to the post made it harder. He had taken too many hits to the ribs during the fight, and every breath came with a small, sharp ache. He scanned the crowd, judging distance, direction, and attitude. None of it gave him a path out. A short distance away, an Apache woman stood between two battered shelters, half in the light and half in the shade of a crooked tree. She kept one arm close to her chest, hiding bruises under her torn deerskin top. Her skirt carried dried mud, dust, and ripped edges from running through brush for several days. Her hair hung long and uneven across her shoulders, strands loose from wind and exhaustion. Her name was Asha. She was 24. She had arrived in the camp only hours before Cole, moving with the kind of caution that came from being hunted. Another band had blamed her for a raid she did not commit, and she had fled with almost nothing. She needed shelter, protection, and a place to disappear. Her mission, for the moment, was survival. Nothing more. She tried to avoid the crowd, but her eyes kept returning to the man tied to the post. She watched the way he stood, silent, aware of every person around him, taking no unnecessary risks. She saw how he restricted his breathing to keep his ribs steady. She noticed his attempts to shift his weight without drawing attention. The smallest details told her he wasn't a reckless man. He was disciplined, cautious, and holding himself together long after many others would have broken. Asha felt something she hadn't felt in days. A small push inside her chest that said this man wasn't like the ones who had chased her through the canyon. She didn't trust easily, and she didn't trust now. Not fully, but he didn't look at anyone with cruelty or mockery. That mattered. When the renegade trader walked toward Cole and announced that bidding would begin, Asha watched closely. Men circled with amused expressions. The first offer came from a tall man holding a worn saddle blanket. The second came from someone waving a chipped metal bowl. Each offer was meant as a joke. They didn't see a person tied to the post. They saw a chance to laugh. Cole's jaw tightened. He didn't look up. He let the ridicule pass him by. He couldn't fight, couldn't run, couldn't talk his way out, so he focused on breathing through the pain and keeping his mind sharp. Asha's pulse changed. A tight pressure built in her chest. She had been forced into decisions her whole life, but this one came from herself. She stepped away from the shade and moved toward the center of the camp. The air shifted as she entered open ground. Conversations quieted. Men turned their heads. She reached into the small woven pouch hidden beneath her skirt. Inside were the last pieces of her past life. A string of beads she had owned since she was small, a small bone-handled knife, and the beaded armband her mother had given her before she died. Losing these items meant cutting off the last pieces of home she carried. but keeping them wouldn't save her. Keeping them wouldn't give her protection. Keeping them wouldn't give her someone she could trust. She stepped closer to the renegade trader. The entire camp watched her. "Free him," she said, her voice steady but raw from days without rest. "He goes with me." A long silence followed. It wasn't respect. It was surprise. The trader narrowed his eyes, gauging whether this woman had anything worth taking. When he saw the armband, carefully woven, clearly important, he nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't question her choice. He reached for Cole. Two men cut the rope from a post. Cole's wrists dropped forward, blood returning to his hands with a sharp sting. The renegades shoved him, but Asha stepped in front of them and blocked the push with her body. She didn't touch Cole, but her stance made it clear she wouldn't allow more violence. Cole looked at her for the second time that day. Confusion tightened in his shoulders. He didn't know what she wanted, why she would trade anything for a stranger, or whether this new situation was better or worse than the last. Asha didn't give him time to question. "Come," she said quietly. He hesitated for a brief moment, long enough for fear and instinct to pull in two opposite directions. Running made no sense. Staying in the camp made even less. She was the only person here who had shown him any kind of will to protect. He decided to follow her. Asha led him out of the camp and into the trees. She had built a small hide-covered shelter earlier that day, barely large enough for two people to sit. They stepped inside. The air was cold and still. Asha crouched down and lit a small fire with shaking hands. She didn't hide her fatigue anymore. Her arms trembled. Her breaths were tight. Cole lowered himself opposite her. His ribs throbbed. His wrists burned. He kept his voice steady. "You didn't have to do that," he said. Asha didn't look at him. She fed a dry branch into the small fire. "I needed someone," she answered plainly. "You were alone too." Cole absorbed her words slowly. She wasn't asking for help. She wasn't demanding anything. She was explaining her decision, directly and without apology. The firelight showed the strain on her face. It also showed fear mixed with something quieter, hope for safety, or at least a chance at it. When she finally looked at him, her voice came out softer. "You stay with me now," she said. "You will be my husband." Cole didn't move or speak right away. He processed every angle: danger, risk, uncertainty, survival. He looked at her bruises, her empty pouch, her exhaustion, the steadiness she was forcing herself to maintain. Her words weren't a command. They were a request from someone who had run out of choices. He didn't answer yet, but he didn't get up to leave. That alone meant something. Asha lowered her eyes to the fire. The tension in her shoulders eased by a fraction. In the silence that followed, each of them tried to understand the other, why they were here, what they needed, and whether trusting a stranger made more sense than trusting anyone else they had met in months. Outside, the camp noise faded under the growing cold. Inside, a wounded cowboy and a hunted Apache woman sat across from each other in a small shelter, both tired, both uncertain, both aware that their lives had just shifted in a way neither had prepared for. Their story began in that quiet space. Two people with nothing left but the decision to sit, breathe, and hope the other did not turn away. Cold morning light pushed into the shelter through a small gap in the hide roof. Cole opened his eyes to the sound of Asha moving quietly near the fire pit. She was kneeling, adding thin branches one by one, careful not to make unnecessary noise. Her movements carried the stiffness of someone who didn't sleep long or well. Cole felt a similar weight in his shoulders and ribs. The night had been a mix of shallow sleep and constant listening. He sat up slowly, feeling the soreness along his side. Asha glanced at him, her eyes alert even before her body fully woke. "You awake?" she said softly. "Yeah," he answered, rubbing his wrists where the skin was raw from the ropes the day before. Asha handed him a small piece of dried meat from her pouch. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. He accepted it with a small nod, trying not to eat it too fast. His stomach tightened from hunger, reminding him how long it had been since a real meal. Asha ate her own portion quietly, taking smaller bites than him. Cole noticed. She was rationing her food in a way that suggested she had done it many times before. He chewed slowly, partly to match her pace and partly because he didn't want to take more from her than he already had. "Camp wakes soon," Asha said. "We leave before that." Cole understood the urgency. Staying too close to the renegades meant trouble, either being taken again or being questioned by people who already traded him away. He also understood that Asha was expected to disappear just as quickly. She had cut ties with her old band, and she didn't belong to this camp either. "Where are we going?" he asked. "To where no one looks for me," she said simply. It wasn't a clear answer, but it was honest. Cole stood up, stretching his back until the stiffness eased a little. He checked the open flap of the shelter. The camp beyond the trees was just beginning to stir. A distant voice rose, then another. Somewhere metal struck metal. Horses shifted in the dust. The early noises of men preparing for another day. Asha noticed his focus. "We must go now," she said. "They see me with you questions." Cole tied his coat tighter, ignoring the pain that pulled across his ribs. "I can walk," he said. She looked at him closely, measuring his condition. He stood straight despite the injury, and though his movements were careful, he wasn't collapsing. She nodded once. Outside the shelter, the cold air hit instantly. Asha wrapped her thin deerskin around her shoulders. Cole saw how much she was shaking, not from fear but from lack of rest and warmth. He stepped ahead to ensure the path was clear. They moved through a narrow break in the trees. Asha walked slightly behind him for the first few minutes, her steps quiet and light. She checked their trail constantly, brushing aside footprints with a branch to hide signs of their passing. Cole's mind kept returning to the night before, the way she had stood in front of the renegades, the way she had offered everything she owned. He didn't understand her full reasoning yet, but he had decided not to question it until the time was right. Being alive was the reason he could ask anything at all. After they climbed a low ridge, the sounds of the camp faded. Asha slowed her pace, breathing harder. Cole noticed a bruise on her arm again, the one she forced herself not to show pain for. "You hurt anywhere else?" he asked. She kept walking for a few seconds before answering. "No more than usual." It wasn't meant to dismiss him. It was the truth. Pain was normal for her at this point. Cole didn't push. He let the silence settle, feeling the shift in her breathing and the weight she carried without saying it. After another half-mile, they reached a small clearing with short grass and scattered rocks. Asha stopped, listening hard. Her eyes tracked the sky, the ridge behind them, and the brush to their left. "Safe here for a moment," she said. She lowered herself onto a rock and stretched her fingers to ease stiffness. Cole sat across from her. "Tell me about the men following you," he said calmly. Asha hesitated. She didn't like revisiting it. Her voice dropped. "I was blamed for a raid. I was not there. But they say women must answer." Cole had seen similar situations in border towns. Leadership masking mistakes by punishing someone weaker. He didn't need the full story yet. He could see the truth in the way she held herself. "They won't stop looking?" he asked. She shook her head. "They want someone to blame. They choose me." Cole exhaled carefully, controlling his reaction. It wasn't shock. It was frustration at how easily people discarded others. He knew the feeling. He had been tired of being used and betrayed years ago, and part of him recognized the same exhaustion in her. "We'll stay ahead of them," he said. Asha lifted her eyes. For the first time since they met, there was a visible shift there. Not hope exactly, but the first sign that she wasn't alone in the decision-making. She stood again. "We move until sun is high. Then find water. Lead the way," Cole said. As they continued, the ground sloped downward into a stretch of scattered brush. Cole stayed close, watching for riders, tracks, or trouble. Asha set a pace she could maintain, not fast but steady. She didn't waste breath on unnecessary conversation, and neither did he. Their silence wasn't cold. It was a shared understanding. Both were tired, both were hunted, both needed each other to reach the next hour. When they reached the dry wash ahead, Asha stopped suddenly. She crouched low, touching the dirt with her fingertips. She lifted a faint track, fresh, curved, made by a horse moving slowly. Her breath tightened. "Someone passed here today," she whispered. Cole knelt beside her, reading the ground. "One rider. Not fast." Asha nodded. His reading matched hers. Could be scout, she said. Could be stranger, Cole replied. Both possibilities held danger. Asha straightened slowly, adjusting the strap on her pouch. She looked at Cole, watching how he handled the uncertainty. Calm, alert, ready to move without panic. You walk with me, she said quietly. I'm here, he answered. It was the first moment that felt like a real agreement rather than survival tied together by necessity. They stepped into the dry wash, their shadows stretching long across the pale dirt. Two hunted people moving with steady caution, beginning a journey neither had planned, but both understood was now shared. The sun rose higher as they followed the narrow, dry wash westward. The ground was uneven with loose stones that shifted under their boots, forcing both of them to stay light on their steps. Asha moved ahead first, her eyes sharp, scanning brush and shallow dips in the land. Cole watched the way her shoulders tightened whenever she noticed anything unusual. He stayed a few paces behind her, giving her space while keeping close enough to respond if trouble came. By mid-morning, the heat settled into the valley, drying sweat along Cole's collar and making his ribs ache more with each breath. He kept silent about it. Complaining had never helped him, and he didn't want to slow her down. Asha didn't show pain when she walked, but he knew she was pushing past exhaustion. Her pace held steady, her breathing even, but her steps grew heavier, and she blinked more often than before. They reached a cluster of rocks where shade stretched across the wash. Asha stopped there and lowered herself onto a flat boulder. Her knees trembled as she sat. Cole joined her without waiting for her to ask. We stop here a little, she said quietly. Cole nodded. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, letting the tension ease from his back. He ran a thumb along the scab on his jaw, feeling the tightness there. His thoughts circled the same silent questions: how far they needed to go, whether the rider from earlier was tracking them, and how quickly his ribs would heal. Asha pulled out her small pouch and took a deep breath before opening it. Inside, she had only a few pieces of dried meat left. She tore one in half and handed him the larger piece. Cole hesitated before taking it. You need it, he said. You are hurt, she replied, her tone firm but tired. You need strength. He didn't argue again. He took the piece and ate slowly. The meat was tough, but the food steadied him. Asha chewed her smaller share with quiet determination. She swallowed hard and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Tracks from Ryder? Not far ahead, she said. You think he's looking for you? Cole asked. Maybe. Maybe he looked for someone else. But I don't trust it. Cole watched her face while she spoke. Her jaw tightened, and a faint line formed between her brows. The fear wasn't loud or frantic. It was the controlled kind that came from knowing danger too well. He understood that kind. It reminded him of long nights on cattle drives when trouble was close but invisible. You've been running a long time, he said. Asha didn't deny it. Since the raid, she answered. They wanted someone to punish. My name was easy for them. Why you? Cole asked. He wasn't pressing. He just needed to understand. I spoke against them once, she said. They did not forget. Cole nodded slowly. He had seen similar things among ranch hands, leaders who punished anyone who questioned them. He felt a faint twist in his chest, sympathy mixed with anger that wasn't directed at her, but at the world that cornered people like her. Asha lifted her head, listening to something only she could hear. After a few seconds, she shook her head slightly. Wind only, she murmured, more to herself than to him. Cole stood, stretching his back. We should move soon. Asha pushed herself to her feet. Her legs were stiff when she stood, and she paused until the trembling eased. Cole steadied her elbow without thinking. She didn't pull away. She let him support her weight for a moment before standing on her own. They continued west until the wash narrowed between two sloping hillsides. The ground dipped into softer dirt, and faint footprints showed in the dust. Asha crouched, tracing the marks with her fingers. Cole crouched beside her. One rider, she confirmed. Alone. Moving slow, Cole added. Not tracking hard. Asha studied the tracks with a long, quiet stare. He turned here, she said, pointing to a curve where the prints veered north. We go south. Cole agreed. He followed her around the bend, where the wash opened into a dry meadow. Grass brushed their legs as they crossed to the far side. Asha paused again, scanning the sky and the ridge behind them. "We find water soon," she said. Her voice carried strain. "I know a place from years ago." Cole saw how tightly she held herself. She was close to her limit. He adjusted his pace to match hers more closely. They traveled another mile before reaching a rocky slope that descended into a shallow hollow. At the bottom was a thin stream running between stones. Asha exhaled with relief. She crouched and splashed water onto her face, rubbing her eyes with both hands. Cole knelt beside her and filled his hands with cold water, drinking until the ache in his throat eased. Asha moved her hair aside and dipped the back of her neck into the stream. The water rolled down her shoulders, washing dust away. Cole stood nearby, guarding the area while she rested. She took several minutes before finally sitting on a flat rock. Cole joined her again. "You look like you haven't slept more than an hour," he said. "I did not sleep good when being hunted," she replied. He studied her. "Last night, I heard you wake 3 times." Asha didn't look at him, but she acknowledged it with a small nod. "I thought camp men might come." "They won't now," Cole said. "Not this far." She forced a slow breath, trying to believe that. For a moment, they sat in silence, listening to the stream moving over stones. Cole finally spoke. "You said yesterday, I don't look at you like others. What did you mean?" Asha hesitated. She frowned slightly as she chose her words. "Many men look at women and think what they want. You look and think what is happening around. You watch danger, not me." Cole took that in. "I'm used to trouble. And I am used to being watched for wrong reasons," she said. Cole met her eyes. "I won't be one of them." Asha held his gaze a long moment before lowering her eyes. Her shoulders loosened a little. When she stood, she steadied herself with one hand on a rock. "We go again soon," she said. "But rest more first." Cole nodded. He stayed seated, watching the path behind them while she closed her eyes for a few minutes. She didn't sleep, but the stillness helped her regain strength. This moment, quiet, tired, cautious, held more trust than anything they had shared before. It wasn't spoken. It didn't need to be. They were beginning to move together, not just out of necessity, but out of choice. The afternoon cooled as they left the hollow and followed a narrow animal trail cutting through low brush. The ground sloped gently upward toward a stretch of pine forest, where the air smelled sharper and the light dimmed under the branches. Asha moved slower now, not because she was giving up speed, but because she was conserving what little energy she had left. Cole noticed every small change, the pause before each step, the way her hand occasionally pressed against her ribs, the slight shake in her fingers. He stayed close enough to catch her if she stumbled, but far enough to give her space. She didn't ask for help, and he didn't force it. He learned long ago that some people held their balance not through strength, but through pride they couldn't afford to lose. At the edge of the forest, Asha stopped and braced her hand against a tree trunk. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, steadying her breath. Cole stepped beside her. "You need a break," he said. "We can't stop long," she replied, forcing her lungs to slow. Someone could still be close. Cole scanned the trees. The forest was quiet. No hooves, no voices, no breaking branches. Only wind shifting through needles. "5 minutes won't kill us," he said calmly. Asha hesitated, then nodded. She slid down to sit at the base of the tree. Her legs gave slightly before she regained control. Cole crouched nearby, resting his hands on his thighs, watching the trail they had come from. "Your bruises are worse today," he said. She pulled her arm closer. "They will fade. Not if you keep pushing without stopping." Asha opened her eyes and studied him carefully, unsure if he was scolding her or simply stating facts. His expression held no judgment, only concern. That surprised her more than she wanted to admit. After a quiet minute, she spoke. "You hurt too." "My ribs will mend," Cole said. "So will mine." He almost smiled at the stubborn way she said it, but the situation was too serious for humor. Instead, he reached into his coat and took out a small scrap of cloth he had torn earlier from his inner lining. He wet it with a few drops of water and handed it to her. "For the bruises. Cool the skin," he he said. She accepted the cloth without looking at him directly. She lifted her sleeve and pressed the damp fabric to her arm, flinching slightly from the cold. The relief was immediate. She lowered her head, grateful for the small break from the ache. "You were a rancher once," she said quietly. He didn't expect a question now, but he answered, "Years back." "What made you leave?" Cole shifted his weight. His jaw tightened. The memory wasn't something he shared, not with anyone, but something about the way she asked, soft, cautious, without pressure, pulled a small truth from him. "Men I trusted turned on me," he said. "I didn't want to stay where I wasn't safe." Asha absorbed his words slowly. "You understand then?" Cole looked at her. "Understand what?" She lowered the cloth. "Running from people who should have protected you." Her voice didn't tremble, but something in her tone revealed how deep that wound went. He nodded. No questions. No prying. Just acknowledgement. Asha stood after a moment, testing her balance. "We go. Forest is good for hiding." Cole rose with her. "Lead the way." They entered the trees where the light dimmed immediately. Needles blanketed the ground, softening their steps. Asha walked ahead, moving more carefully now, but with purpose. She pointed out a narrow, almost invisible break between pine trunks. "Deer path," she said. "Quiet. Hard to follow." Cole followed her through the tight space, brushing aside low branches. The forest thickened, turning the world into layers of green and brown. Asha slowed again when the path opened into a small clearing. She scanned every angle, sky, ground, shadows before stepping out. "This place is good," she said. "We stay here tonight." Cole agreed. The clearing had natural cover, fallen logs, dense undergrowth, and a slight rise on one side that offered a vantage point. He dropped his pack and knelt to gather fallen branches. Asha crouched to help, but her hand shook. Cole placed a gentle hand on her wrist. "Sit. I've got it." She stiffened, ready to protest, but stopped when she saw his expression. He wasn't trying to take control. He was giving her room to rest. She sat near the center of the clearing and watched him work. His movements were steady, practiced. He built a fire pit by clearing a round space, placing stones around it, and layering small branches carefully. She studied how he handled each step, not rushed, not careless. "You know many things," she said. He shrugged. "Learned to rely on myself a long time ago." She understood that too well. When the fire finally caught, Asha leaned toward the warmth. Her shoulders lowered. The tension around her eyes eased. Cole sat across from her, stretching his legs. They ate the last of the dried meat in silence. Asha's portion was small, but she forced herself to eat it slowly. She glanced at him once. "You follow me without asking where we go." "Why?" she asked. Cole rested his forearms on his knees. "Because running alone gets you killed. Running with someone gives you a chance." "And you trust me?" she asked. He took a moment before answering. "Enough to be here." Asha's eyes softened at that. Trust was rare for both of them. Hearing it spoken plainly hit her harder than she expected. Night approached slowly. The temperature dropped. Asha wrapped her arms around herself to stay warm. Cole noticed and shifted closer, stopping just short of touching. "You can sleep now," he said. "I'll keep watch." "You sleep first," she said firmly. "You need it more." She shook her head. "If something comes, I hear it first. I know sounds of this land." He considered her words. She was right. Her ears caught danger faster than his. Her instincts had kept them ahead of pursuit since leaving the camp. "Fine," he said. "Wake me when you get tired." She nodded once. Asha sat upright, listening to the forest. Cole lay back against a fallen log, keeping one eye partially open to watch her. Her silhouette, outlined by the fire, looked worn but determined. She rubbed the cloth along her bruised arm, trying to ease the sting. Cole felt a slow, unfamiliar sense of responsibility tightening inside him. Not forced, not reluctant. Something more natural. She had bought his freedom, yes, but she had also taken a risk that could cost her life. Staying close felt like the right thing. As night deepened, Asha listened to the sounds of the forest, wind, insects, rustling branches, and Cole let his eyelids fall heavy, knowing she would wake him if anything shifted. They were no longer just escaping danger. They were beginning to protect each other. By dawn, the fire had burned down to dull, red embers. Cole woke to the soft scrape of Asha's footsteps as she stood at the edge of the clearing, studying the forest with the stillness of someone who felt every small change in the land. Her back rose and fell with controlled breaths, and her hair hung loose down her shoulders, catching the early gray light. She hadn't slept more than an hour. Cole pushed himself upright, the ache in his ribs sharp from sleeping on uneven ground. When Asha heard a move, she turned slightly, her expression guarded. "You should sleep more," he said. She shook her head. "Too much noise in my head. Hard to shut down." Cole understood. He had spent years sleeping lightly, expecting trouble in every sound. He stood slowly, stepping beside her. The cold air tightened the skin on his face. "What do you hear?" he asked. Asha pointed toward the far ridge. "Birds wrong. Quiet in places where they stay loud." Cole listened. She was right. The forest had a thinness to its morning sounds, fewer calls, fewer movements. Something had passed through recently or was still nearby. "You think it's a rider?" he asked. Asha hesitated. Could be animal, but too early for silence like this. Cole watched the ridge. Nothing moved, but his stomach tightened with the sense of being watched. He inhaled slowly and kept his voice calm. "We eat, then move." Asha nodded. She knelt by her pouch, pulling out the little food they had left. A few dried berries, a small strip of meat, and crumbs of something she had saved longer than she should have. She divided them evenly without hesitation. Cole frowned. "You need more than that." "We share the same way," she said, placing half in his hand. "If you fall weak, I fall too." He didn't argue further. He ate slowly, watching how she stretched each bite. Her cheeks looked slightly hollow from lack of food, and her eyes carried a growing heaviness from constant alertness. When a meal ended, Asha rinsed her hands with water from the stream nearby. Cole helped pack the fire pit, covering the ashes so no smoke would give them away. Before leaving, Asha crouched and pressed her palm to the ground, feeling the soil for vibrations or disturbance. It was a habit that came naturally to her. "Nothing fresh here," she said quietly. "We go west toward rocks." Cole nodded. "Lead. I'll watch behind." They moved through the forest, weaving between tall pines. The ground felt damp, and the air carried a cold bite that hinted at rain later. Asha walked confidently despite fatigue, choosing paths that left little trace. Cole kept close, occasionally glancing behind them, aware of how exposed they would be if someone followed. After an hour, they reached a gentle slope where the forest thinned into a small plateau scattered with boulders. A shallow windbreak formed naturally along the edge. Asha paused beside a large stone, placing her hand against it. "I hid here once when I was younger," she said. "Good place to look around." Cole climbed the small rise beside her. From the top, he saw the valley stretch out in long folds: brush, grass, scattered trees, and a narrow, dry riverbed cutting through the land. He scanned for movement, tracks, or smoke. Nothing obvious. "You think someone's close?" Cole asked as he stepped down. Asha didn't answer right away. Her eyes searched the distant shapes. "I think danger travels faster than we do." Cole lowered his voice. "Then we stay ahead." She nodded but didn't move. For a moment, she stood very still, as if deciding whether to share something she had held back. "When they blamed me," she began, her voice quieter than before, "I thought they would come for me that first night. I waited with knife ready. No one came. Then next morning, they said I must pay for men lost in raid. I was not even there." Cole's jaw tightened. They needed someone easy to point at. Asha looked down, her fingers curling tightly at her side. "They wanted silence. I had spoken against leader weeks before." Cole wasn't surprised. He had seen what happened to people who stood against authority for the right reasons. He didn't try to comfort her with empty words. Instead, he let her speak as much as she was willing. "I ran in dark. My mother's things. I dropped one. I kept only what I could hold." She swallowed hard. "I thought maybe someone would chase me right away, but they waited until morning. They looked for me after. And after that, another group saw me and thought I was part of trouble." Cole let out a slow breath. "You've been alone since?" She nodded. "Until yesterday." He looked at her more closely. Her face held exhaustion, but also a determination that pushed through every bruise and setback. "You're not alone now," he said. Asha lifted her eyes, meeting his directly. There was no dramatic shift, no sudden emotion, but something subtle changed in her posture. Her shoulders eased, her breath steadied. "We walk together then," she said quietly. "Yes," Cole answered. "We do." They continued west, moving between the boulders until they reached a narrow gap, leading into a deeper section of forest. Cole noticed Asha's pace slowing again. He stepped ahead of her and pushed a low branch aside so she wouldn't have to fight through it. Asha stopped behind him. "Why you help me this much?" she asked softly. Cole looked over his shoulder. "You helped me first." "That was need," she said. "This is choice." Cole didn't speak for a moment. He chose his words carefully. "I've gone a long time without trusting anyone. Didn't think it mattered anymore. But you didn't trade me to use me. You traded everything you had to get away. I owe you. And I respect what it cost you." Asha blinked, taking in each word like something unfamiliar. She stepped closer. "You stay because you want?" "Yes," he said simply. That answer steadied something inside her she had kept hidden since the moment the accusations first fell on her shoulders. They walked again, side by side this time rather than one ahead of the other. Small gaps closed between them naturally. No forced contact, just the awareness of two people moving in rhythm. By late afternoon, they reached a natural stone overhang shaped by years of weather. It offered shelter from wind and a clear view of the path behind them. Asha tested the ground, brushing aside leaves. Cole checked the ridge for any signs of danger. "This place is good for night," she decided. Cole nodded. "We'll make it work." They began gathering wood and preparing the small space. Asha's hands moved slower now, each motion heavy. Cole noticed the tremble returning to her shoulders and gently pulled the bundle of sticks from her grasp. "I'll do it," he said. "Sit. Rest." Asha didn't argue this time. She sank onto a flat stone, leaning forward to ease the strain in her back. She watched him work, her eyes steady but tired. When the fire finally sparked to life, she let out a breath she had been holding all day. The light warmed her face, and Cole sat beside her, close enough for comfort, not close enough to pressure. For the first time since they fled the camp, the silence between them didn't feel scared or uncertain. It felt like part of something forming, something beginning to take shape in quiet, steady pieces neither of them had expected when the day started. Night settled early under the stone overhang. The fire burned low but steady, throwing a faint glow across the rough walls. Asha sat close to the warmth, rubbing her hands together to bring feeling back in her fingers. Cole sat a short distance away, sharpening a small blade he had found in her pouch. The rhythmic scrape of metal against stone was the only sound for several minutes. Asha watched the blade move between his hands. Her eyes were half-lidded with exhaustion, but she stayed alert. She had spent too many nights waiting for danger to fall from silence. Cole sensed it. "You should sleep now," he said. "I will." "Soon," she replied. Soon meant she wasn't ready. He didn't push. A cold draft slipped under the rock overhang. Asha wrapped her arms tighter around herself. Cole noticed. Without speaking, he lifted his coat from beside him and held it out. She looked at it for a second, weighing whether to take something that clearly mattered to him. "Use it," he said. "I don't need it as much." She hesitated one more heartbeat, then accepted it carefully. The fabric was rough but warm. She draped it around her shoulders, pulling it close to her neck. Cole watched her settle into it. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer than moments before. Cole nodded. The fire crackled lightly, and Asha leaned forward, letting the heat wash over her face. After another minute of silence, she spoke. "You trust me enough to sleep near me," she said. "That surprises me." Cole replied without looking away from the blade. "If I didn't trust you, I'd be sitting with my back to the wall and a weapon in my hand." Asha considered his words. "You don't fear I'll hurt you?" "No," he said simply. Asha lowered her eyes. "I feared you yesterday." He finally looked at her. "Not anymore." She shook her head. "Not now." Cole felt something shift in his chest, a quiet pull he had been resisting since she bought his freedom. It wasn't attachment, not yet. It was recognition. Two people deciding they didn't want the other to disappear. Asha stretched her legs and winced when her thigh muscle tightened. Cole noticed immediately. "You need to rest that," he said. "I can walk," she answered. "I know," he replied. "But you're hurt." Asha frowned slightly, not from pain, but from being seen. She wasn't used to someone noticing the small signs. "You watch everything," she said quietly. "Old habit," Cole answered. "And you watch me more than you say." Cole's jaw tightened. Not from discomfort, more from the truth of it. "I'm keeping us alive." She met his eyes directly. "You care," she said slowly. Cole didn't answer at first. He wasn't sure what he wanted to admit. But after a few seconds, he exhaled. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I do." Asha held that truth between them, letting it settle. A gust of cold air swept through the shelter. Cole added another piece of wood to the fire. The warmth grew, filling the small space. Asha pulled his coat closer around herself. "You should sleep first," she said. "I keep watch." "You kept watch last night," Cole replied. She shook her head. "I hear danger faster." Cole studied her. She was telling the truth. Her senses were sharper, her instincts tuned to the environment. He forced himself to relax his shoulders. "Wake me if anything changes," he said. Asha nodded. Cole lay down on the blanket they had spread earlier. He faced the fire, one hand near his boot knife but not gripping it. Asha sat upright a few feet away, listening to the wind move through branches overhead. As Cole's breathing slowed, Asha turned her attention fully to the forest. Every sound mattered. The dry snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, even the shift of the fire's glow. She had lived long enough in fear to know when danger crept near. Tonight felt tense but not immediate. Cole slept lightly, the way men sleep when they don't trust the night. Asha glanced at him occasionally, her expression softening. She didn't understand why he stayed with her, not completely. But she knew what it felt like to be left behind, and he hadn't left. After an hour, she gently touched his shoulder. "Your turn," she whispered. He woke instantly, eyes sharp before softening once he recognized her. "Anything?" he asked. "Nothing close," she said. "But animals quiet. We should stay alert." Cole sat up and stretched. "Get some rest." Asha curled into the space where he had been lying. She kept his coat wrapped around herself and used her pouch as a pillow. Her breathing steadied quickly, the kind of rest only exhaustion allowed. Cole watched her for a moment, noting how small she looked wrapped in his coat, how tightly she held herself even in sleep. He felt a steady sense of obligation, not forced, not burdened, just the clear understanding that she needed someone to stay awake, to stand guard, to keep her safe. He stayed awake long after her breathing settled, listening to the forest, scanning the shadows, and gripping the handle of his knife when the wind carried unfamiliar sounds. Nothing approached, but the tension stayed. As the night deepened, Cole had one clear thought. They were no longer moving together out of desperation. They were beginning to rely on each other in a way neither had meant to, but both had started to choose. Morning arrived quietly, the kind of quiet that didn't feel safe yet, but also didn't feel immediately dangerous. A thin line of gray light slipped into the overhang as Cole finished the last hour of watch. Asha was still asleep, curled beneath his coat, her breathing steady for the first time since they left the border camp. He didn't wake her right away. She needed the rest more than she admitted. When she finally stirred, she rubbed her eyes slowly and pushed herself up with a small groan of stiffness. Cole watched her sit upright, her hair falling across her face until she brushed it back. "You didn't sleep enough," she said, noticing the shadows beneath his eyes. "I slept enough," he replied. "Quiet night." Asha glanced toward the tree line, listening. "Forest feels different now. Not heavy like yesterday. Safer?" Cole asked. "Maybe," she said, "but we still move." They packed what little they had. Cole folded his coat and handed it to her. She hesitated only a second before giving it back. "You need it today," she said. "Cold air hurts ribs." He didn't argue. He slipped the coat on carefully, the fabric pressing softly against his sore side. They left the overhang and traveled along a narrow ridge that looked out over a long stretch of valley. The ground was uneven and sloped downward, forcing them to move slowly. Asha pointed out a faint trail used by deer. "This path hides our tracks," she said. Cole followed her into the brush. He noticed the way she tested each piece of ground before stepping forward, checking for loose soil, listening for branches that might snap underfoot. She moved like someone who had lived too long expecting pursuit. After an hour, they reached a small meadow where the grass stood waist-high. Asha crouched low and motioned for Cole to do the same. "Why are we slowing?" he asked quietly. "Someone passed here," she said. "Look at grass." Cole examined the area. Several blades were bent in the same direction, not by wind but by weight. A single path cut through the grass, narrow but recent. "One traveler," she said. "Light step. Maybe scouting." Cole's jaw tightened. "Tracking us." Asha shook her head. "Too early to say. Could be animal hunter. Could be banned from another camp." Cole looked across the meadow. A distant cluster of birds lifted from trees, scattered abruptly. He didn't like the feel of that. "We stay low," he said. They crossed the meadow in a crouched posture, moving slowly until they reached the far side where shrubs grew thick along a rocky streambed. Asha stepped carefully down into the dry stones and sat on a boulder to rest her knees. Cole sat beside her, breathing deeper than usual. He had kept quiet about his ribs, but the climb down had pulled at the injured muscles. "You're worse today," Asha said. He didn't deny it. Still moving. "You don't need to hide pain from me," she said. "I'm not hiding," he replied. "I just know stopping makes us vulnerable." Asha studied him closely. "I won't leave you behind." Cole paused. Her voice was steady, not emotional. She wasn't trying to comfort him. She was stating fact. "Good to know," he said quietly. Asha leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Her hand brushed the necklace she wore, a small string of beads that had survived the raid. She rarely touched it, but when she did, Cole knew she was thinking of something from before she started running. "What happens if they catch you?" Cole asked. She answered without hesitation. "They bring me back. Judge me in front of everyone. Punishment would be sharp and quick." Cole felt a pull in his stomach, anger beginning to rise. She wasn't speaking dramatically. She was describing it plainly because she had already accepted the danger. "They won't catch you," he said firmly. Asha looked at him, searching his face to measure whether he believed his own words. After a moment, she nodded once. "We keep moving west," she said. They followed the stream bed another mile until the trees thickened again. Light filtered through in broken beams. Asha stopped suddenly, her hand lifting slightly as if sensing something before seeing it. Cole froze beside her. "What is it?" he whispered. Asha's eyes narrowed. "Smoke. Small fire." Cole inhaled carefully. He caught it too, a faint scent carried by the breeze. Not strong, but close enough to matter. "Someone camping?" he asked. "Or waiting," she replied. Cole scanned the area, mentally mapping escape routes. "We can't walk into it." "No," Asha said, "but we can look." She motioned for him to follow her along a side path that curved uphill. They moved slowly, placing each foot with precision, avoiding twigs and loose stones. The slope leveled into a vantage point overlooking a small pocket of trees below. Through the branches, a thin line of smoke rose from a hidden fire pit. No voices. No movement. Asha crouched lower. "This is wrong." Cole studied the scene. "Why?" "Fire looks controlled. Hidden. Someone trying not to be seen." He didn't like that. "Could be just a hunter," he offered. Asha shook her head. "Hunters don't hide fire this much in open land. This is watch fire. Someone waits." A weight settled in Cole's chest. "Then we don't go near it." "No," she said. "We leave the forest. Find new ground." They retreated carefully, making sure not to disturb the brush. When they reached safer distance, Asha finally breathed more freely. "Someone follows trail," she said. Cole didn't argue. The signs were too clear now. But instead of fear, Asha's expression hardened with decision. "We leave this area," she said. "We cross rocks to west. Harder for them to track." Cole nodded. "Lead. I'll guard our back." They moved quickly, both aware the window of distance between them and whoever was behind that fire was narrowing. The tension between them didn't push them apart. It pulled them closer, the instinct to protect each other sharpening with every step. As they climbed toward a rocky ridge, Asha paused only once and looked back at him. "You could have left already," she said quietly. "You didn't." Cole met her eyes without looking away. "I'm not leaving." Asha held his gaze for a long second, her throat tightening with unspoken gratitude. They reached the ridge, both breathing hard, both watching the shadows behind them. The danger was real now, closer than either wanted to admit. But they were facing it together, not as strangers bound by circumstance anymore, but as two people who had begun to make choices based on each other. The rocky ridge stretched ahead in long, uneven layers, each step demanding more balance than strength. Cole stayed a half step behind Asha, watching the way her boots searched for footholds. The air thinned at this height, carrying the faint smell of dust and dry pine. Behind them, the forest looked distant, swallowed in shadow. Neither spoke for nearly half an hour. They were both too focused on putting distance between themselves and the hidden fire. By midday, heat bounced off the stones and made breathing harder. Asha stopped at a narrow ledge and leaned against the rock wall, pressing one hand to her chest as she tried to even out her breathing. Cole moved closer. "You're winded." "Only a little," she said. Her voice was tight, the strain clear. "You didn't sleep enough," he replied. "You didn't either." He didn't argue, but he watched her closely. Her lips were dry, and the exertion had deepened the bruising on her arm. He reached into the pouch they shared and pulled out the water skin. Asha accepted it, drinking small, controlled sips. When she capped it, she didn't hand it back immediately. Instead, she looked down the slope behind them, eyes narrowed. "No one follows yet," she said, "but someone's searched for trail. I feel it." Cole believed her. Her instincts had saved them more than once. "We'll keep moving," he said. "But at your pace this time." She gave the slightest nod. It wasn't approval. It was acceptance. They continued along the ridge until the terrain softened into a series of wide stone shelves. Asha led him toward a flat outcropping with a natural dip in the center. It was shallow enough to see danger coming, but deep enough to hide their silhouettes. "This place is good for rest," she said. Cole agreed. They sat on opposite sides of the dip, facing each other. Asha leaned back on her hands, stretching her legs. Cole noticed how much she fought to keep her posture straight. Fatigue clung to her in ways she tried to conceal. "You keep pushing yourself," he said. "If I stop, danger catches us." "It won't catch us today." Her eyes flicked toward him, searching for doubt. When she found none, her shoulders eased a little. Cole took the water skin again and dampened a small cloth. He sat beside her and held it up. "Your arm's worse," he said. "Let me clean it." Asha stiffened, caught between instinct and trust. After a long moment, she extended her arm. The skin was swollen and discolored, the cut deeper now that bruising spread around it. Cole cleaned the wound gently. Asha kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, trying not to flinch as the cold cloth passed over tender skin. When he pressed a little too firmly, her breath hitched. "Sorry," he murmured. "It's fine," she said, though her jaw tightened. "You should have told me it hurt this much." "I thought it would pass," she replied. "Hurts worse today." "Yes." Cole wrapped the arm carefully with a strip torn from the inner lining of his shirt. It wasn't clean cloth, but it was all they had left. Asha watched his hands with quiet focus, steady, deliberate, trying not to cause more pain than necessary. When he finished, she looked at the bandaging, touched it lightly, and then turned her gaze toward him. "You help me again," she said. "You do the same," Cole replied. Asha didn't answer right away. She drew her knees up and hugged them gently. "I didn't think anyone would stay with me," she said quietly. "Why not?" "Because danger follows me. Most people avoid that." Cole took a deep breath, keeping his voice steady. "I've been alone a long time. Didn't think I'd stay with anyone again. But I'm here." She held his gaze, steady, searching for several seconds. Nothing dramatic passed between them, but something shifted. Her guarded expression softened, her shoulders lowered, and the tension in her eyes eased into something warmer. They rested until the light changed, turning softer as late afternoon approached. Asha stood slowly, testing her arm. The pain was still there, but more manageable now. "We moved to Valley before dark," she said. Cole nodded. You lead. I'll watch behind. They descended the far side of the ridge, moving through a steep cut in the rock. On the other side, the land opened into a broad valley with tall grass and scattered trees. The wind carried the scent of water. Asha pointed ahead. A stream. Good place to refill. As they approached, Cole paused suddenly. He lifted his hand in warning. Asha froze instantly. "What is it?" she whispered. He crouched low, pointing to a cluster of rocks ahead. Between them, faint boot prints pressed into the dirt. Fresh, not more than 2 or 3 hours old. Asha's chest tightened. One man. Cole studied the pattern. Two. Walking slow. To find us? She asked quietly. He scanned the area again. Maybe. Maybe not. But they're close. Asha looked toward the stream, then toward the long valley. If we go back, we get trapped. If we go forward, we risk meeting them. Cole nodded slowly. We go forward, but we go slowly, and we stay hidden. Asha's breathing deepened, tension rising, but she didn't panic. She stepped close to him, lowering her voice further. If something happens, she said, you run. I slow them. Cole turned sharply. No. Her eyes widened slightly at the force in his voice. We stay together, he said. No more running alone. Asha studied him. His steadiness, his certainty, and the fear in her face changed shape. It didn't disappear, but it blended with something stronger. I trust you, she said quietly. Cole held her gaze. Good, because I'm not letting you face anything alone. They crossed the valley in silence, following the stream through tall grass. Every sound mattered now. The rustle of wind, the shift of stones beneath their feet, the distant creak of branches. Danger was close, closer than ever, but neither of them moved apart. They walked side by side, their steps synchronized without trying. For the first time since all this began, Asha felt the weight of fear lighten. Not because the threat disappeared, but because she no longer carried alone. The valley narrowed as they moved deeper along the streambed. The grass grew taller, brushing against their legs and muffling their steps. Cole kept scanning the edges of the water, watching for movement in the reeds or shadows between the rocks. Asha stayed close, her arm wrapped in the bandage he had made, her breathing controlled but uneven from fatigue and worry. They didn't speak. Every sound around them carried weight. A faint crack of a twig echoed from behind. Cole stopped instantly. Asha froze beside him. Both listened without moving. The stream made soft clicking sounds as water nudged small stones in its path, but over that steady noise came another, slow footsteps. Cole motioned to Asha with 2 fingers, pointing toward a cluster of boulders on their right. She nodded and crouched low, moving behind a fallen log. Cole followed, staying close enough to react if someone appeared suddenly. The footsteps came nearer. Cole placed his hand lightly on the grip of his knife. Asha held her breath, her eyes wide but steady. A shadow moved along the tall grass. Then another. Cole leaned in close to her ear, speaking in the lowest whisper possible. 2 people, same ones from the tracks. Asha nodded once. She shifted her weight quietly, ready to move if she had to. Minutes passed slowly. The footsteps moved in a curved pattern, sweeping the area carefully, then paused. Cole sensed one of the men scanning the ground. If they found a footprint or disturbed grass, the chase would begin. Asha leaned slightly toward Cole, barely whispering. We wait. They go soon. Cole listened hard. The footsteps shifted direction and then faded. The 2 shadows moved south, away from the streambed. Asha exhaled deeper than before, her shoulders trembling once the danger passed. Cole touched her forearm lightly. You okay? She nodded, although her breath was shaky. I thought they'd find us. They didn't, he said. You chose the right place to hide. Asha closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. She wasn't used to someone speaking to her calmly in moments like this. She was used to running alone, making decisions alone, fearing alone. Now she wasn't alone. We move now, she said when her breath evened. Quiet. Fast. They headed west along the stream, staying within the tall grass until the land widened again. The sound of the men behind them grew more distant, swallowed by trees and wind. When they reached a bend in the stream, Asha stopped. The land shifted upward into a small rise dotted with short pines. She pointed toward a gentle slope in the distance. "I know a place," she said. "Not far. Hard to find. Safe." Cole followed her up the slope, using his free hand to help steady her when the climbing angle steepened. She accepted the support without argument this time. She needed it now, and she knew it. They crested the rise, and the land ahead opened into a hidden hollow, protected by rock on one side and thick brush on the other. A small pool of still water sat in the center, fed by the same stream that had guided them this far. The air was cooler there, and the ground felt firm. Asha walked straight to the pool and knelt, touching the surface as if greeting something familiar. "I came here once with my mother," she said quietly. "Long time ago." It was quiet then, still quiet now. Cole approached slowly, letting her have the moment. He knelt beside her and dipped his hand into the water. It was cold and clean. "This will work," he said. Asha nodded. "We stay here tonight. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe longer." Cole studied her face. "This feels different from the other places you chose." Asha looked around, her eyes softening. This place never brought danger, only quiet. He understood. It wasn't just a hiding place. It was a memory of peace, something she rarely had. She sat on the ground near the pool, breathing deeply. Cole lowered himself beside her. The tension in his ribs eased at last, and the weariness in his bones settled in a way that wasn't panic, just tired relief. After a long silence, Asha spoke again. "Why I bought you? I was afraid. I thought maybe you fight me, or run, or hurt me." Cole turned his head slightly. "Why did you do it anyway?" Her eyes met his. The truth came out with no hesitation. "Because I didn't want to be alone anymore. And because you looked like someone who wouldn't break me." Cole felt the words settle heavily inside him. He had heard desperation in people before. Her tone wasn't desperation. It was truth, raw, simple, painful. "I didn't understand it then," he admitted. "But I understand now." Asha touched the water with her fingertips again, watching the ripples. "You could leave now. There's no rope, no camp, no danger holding you to me." Cole shifted closer, his voice low but sure. "I'm not leaving." Asha swallowed, her eyes brightening in a way she couldn't hide. "Not even if trouble comes again?" "No," he said. "I'm here because I choose to be." She breathed slowly, deeply, as if those words loosened something she'd been carrying for too long. She reached for his hand, not quickly, not boldly, but with a careful, deliberate movement. Cole didn't pull away. He let her fingers settle over his, and he closed his hand gently around hers. Warmth passed between them, simple, real, grounding. As the sun lowered behind the ridge, casting long shadows across the hollow, they sat together beside the quiet pool. No fear pressed at their backs now. The danger behind them had lost their trail. The land ahead was theirs to decide. For the first time, the path forward didn't feel like running. It felt like the beginning of a place where both could stay. The hollow stayed quiet through the night. No distant footsteps, no shifting branches, no signs of pursuit. Cole slept lightly, but without fear, waking every so often to check the perimeter before settling again beside Asha. She slept deeper than she had in days. When dawn finally touched the tops of the rocks, she woke slowly, blinking at the soft light filtering through the brush. Cole sat near the pool, rinsing his hands. He looked over when he heard her stir. "Morning." Asha pushed herself upright, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "Feels different today," she said. Cole nodded. "Safer." She studied him for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. "Not just the place." He held her gaze. "I know." They ate the last pieces of dried berries she had saved, sitting close enough that their shoulders brushed. She didn't move away this time. When a meal was done, Asha knelt by the pool, washing her face and arms. Cole checked their surroundings out of habit, but his posture was more relaxed now, as if he finally allowed himself to believe danger wasn't breathing down their necks. Asha stood and faced him. "We can stay in this hollow. Water is here. Land is good for finding food. No one passes through unless they know it." Cole looked around at the rise of rock on one side, the brush forming natural walls on the other, the pool catching the early light. A quiet place. A place without eyes or threats. A good place to live, he said. Asha took a slow breath. The tension she carried since the day they met eased further from her shoulders. You want to? He stepped closer. I do. Asha lowered her head for a moment, overwhelmed by the simplicity of the answer. She wasn't used to simple. She was used to running, explaining herself, defending every step she took. She lifted her eyes again, steady this time. I asked you to be my husband that first night, she said. I was afraid. I needed someone. You weren't wrong, Cole replied. We needed each other. She nodded. But now I ask again, not from fear, from choice. Cole's chest tightened, not with panic, but with the weight of something solid, something earned over every mile they crossed together. He moved closer until there was only a hand's width between them. I choose you too, he said. If you want me as your husband, then that's what I'll be. Asha didn't speak at first. She stepped forward and placed her palm against his chest, feeling the slow, steady beat under his shirt. Her fingers pressed lightly, as if confirming the truth of his words. Cole covered her hand with his own. Then we stay here, she whispered. We make life in this place. Together, he said. Her breathing trembled, not from fear, but from release. Cole brushed a strand of hair from her face. Their foreheads touched gently, both of them standing still as the wind shifted around them. When she lifted her chin, he kissed her. Not hurried, not uncertain. A steady, grounded kiss that carried everything the last days had built: trust, survival, and the quiet promise not to walk away. Asha leaned into him, her hands resting against his sides. When they parted, she didn't step back. She stayed close, her voice steady and quiet. We build shelter stronger, she said. We find food. We make fire pit bigger. We plant small things. Cole smiled faintly. Small, real. We do all of that. And no more running, she added. No more running, he agreed. She let her fingers slide down to his hand, intertwining them. You my husband now. He squeezed her hand gently. And you my wife. They spent the morning setting the hollow into the beginnings of a home. Cole cut branches into sturdy beams, while Asha wove together lengths of brush and hide to strengthen the shelter wall. They worked side by side, speaking only when needed, comfortable in the growing rhythm of shared labor. By afternoon, the hollow looked different. It felt lived in, claimed. Asha shaped a small fire pit with stones, her movements careful and sure. Cole gathered larger branches for the night. When he returned, he saw her sitting near the pool, carving a thin line into the dirt with a stick. He crouched beside her. What's that? She pointed to the two simple shapes she had drawn. Two lines joined side by side. Symbol, she said. Two people standing together. Cole added a small line beneath, anchoring the lines into the ground. Our home, he said. She smiled softly. Yes. They sat beside each other as the sun set behind the ridge, the valley glowing in muted light. No fear hung over them. No footsteps followed. The air carried only the sound of water and the quiet rustling of trees. Asha leaned against Cole's shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her waist. Their bodies relaxed into the closeness like they had known each other much longer than they had. We start new life here, she said, her voice warm and sure. We do, Cole replied. The light faded, the fire warmed the small shelter, and the hollow became their first real home. Two people who met through desperation now stood together by choice, with no more running, no more fear, and no more uncertainty. Their story ended with a quiet promise fulfilled. They belonged to each other, and they would face every new day side by side.